The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
We're all familiar with the three whats: what it is, what it can do for me, and what does it cost. Tyler Rickenaugh, Country Financial, can help you find the answers with insurance coverage to help protect what's most important to you, all at a price you can afford. So while you're juggling work and kids while trying to keep an eye on your financial future, Tyler Rickenaugh, Country Financial, will make sure they are the first ones there when you need them most.
The kids are back to school, and your schedule is busier than ever. From daycare pickup, doctor's appointments, sports, and college tuition, a parent's signature is a powerful thing. Have you ever stopped to think, what would happen if you weren't able to provide one? With thoughtful estate planning, you can make sure that your child's health and education needs are met in the event of your absence due to a temporary incapacity or even death. The estate planning team at Hurley Burrish is here to help.
Fostering deeper relationships, influencing behavior change, developing resilience. You're about to start winning. Here is your host, Christine Bright.
Welcome to Parenting Game. I am so glad you are here. My guest is Melissa Shutwell, who's been an advocate for families with special needs. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
I've been wanting to have you on the show for quite a while. Share with us, you have just taken a new position.
I did, yes. As of January 1st, I am the executive director of an organization called the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network. We are a nationwide organization that supports parents of children with Down syndrome that are either expecting a child with Down syndrome, so pregnant, newly found this diagnosis out and are looking for support and information and connection, or in those first few years of having and raising a child with Down syndrome when there's still a lot of unknowns and, again, looking for connection and support. So that's what we do, and we do that in a lot of different ways. We connect parents through our online networks, our social networks. We also work in the medical community to try to ensure that the diagnosis itself is being handled in a non-biased, up-to-date, informative way, and providing parents with the information that they need as they proceed in that pregnancy.
And we'll get into this a little bit further, but I am sure receiving that diagnosis is overwhelming, lots of emotions attached. So it's so
Absolutely.
Lovely that there are so many resources out there. Before we dig into some of that, there is a reason that you have become such an advocate in the community. So share with us about your family.
Yeah, thank you. I love to talk about my family. So we live in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. I'm married to my husband, Nick, of 18 years now, and we have three really great, beautiful kids. My daughter, Maddie, is 12 and in 7th grade. She is wildly creative, musically talented, artistically talented. She is autistic and has ADHD and anxiety. So she experiences the world in a little bit different way. She interacts with people in a little bit different way. Her brain works in a little bit different way than maybe other typical 12-year-olds. But she's a delight, and I just love seeing how she is continuing to grow, and her personality just, is coming out, and her likes and her dislikes. And we're almost to the teenage years, so wish me luck. My son Beckett is 8, and he is in 3rd grade here, again, in Sun Prairie. He's my very active, into sports kiddo. He wants to watch, play, or talk about football almost all the time, and doesn't stop during the day. He's just constantly on the move until it's time to go to bed at night. And then my youngest son, Augie, is 6, and he's in first grade, almost 7, and he likes to talk about his birthday often. Sweetest boy you'll ever meet, doesn't know a stranger.
I've had the pleasure of being able to watch him at church,
Yes.
and he is a delight.
He just loves everyone, and everyone loves him. He draws people to him like no one I've ever met. So he has Down syndrome, and that is what really started me out on the journey of advocating more significantly for kids with disabilities, and especially with Down syndrome. At the time, we didn't even have an autism diagnosis for my daughter. So we did have an ADHD and an anxiety disorder, but we've had a lot of learning and a lot of difficulty actually getting a diagnosis with my daughter. So her diagnosis came early or late in her. We just got it within the last year, whereas Augie, I knew prenatally that he was going to have Down syndrome. So yes, he's really, all my kids have changed the trajectory of what I was going to do with my life and what it now looks like.
Yeah, because you were in the corporate world
I was.
for 15 years.
Yes,
And then you took a break.
I did.
So share with us about that break and then what happened in your career path after.
Yeah, so I was in the corporate world for 15 years, like you said, and there's a couple reasons why I decided to step out of that space and to first stay home with my kids before starting a new path. One, I think I just knew in my heart that that isn't what I was meant to do, and I was feeling pulled in a new direction. With my son Augie, he had pretty significant health challenges when he was first born. He needed open heart surgery when he was 3.5 months old. He has something called Hirschsprung's disease, which is with his intestines, and he had surgery for that. I think he had 13 different procedures in the first 2 years of his life. And so a lot of my time was focused on Augie and the medical side of his life at the time. And it was probably the most difficult of our 6 years with him was just the scariness of all of those new diagnoses and not quite sure what it meant, and being in the hospital and surgeries and waiting and hearing different things from different doctors, and also having a 2-year-old at the time, because my boys are very close in age, and a 6-year-old who was at that time newly diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety. So it was a lot, and I felt like I needed to be, in that and not focused at that time in the corporate world, and instead focused on my family. Yeah. So that was about 2 years that I was home and felt like that's exactly where I needed to be. But as Augie has, his health has, or the medical issues have become less and less of a thing. And now you look at him, he's just a healthy, almost 7-year-old boy with a healthy heart and thriving. As those issues became less and less, it freed up a lot of our time and gave me opportunity to look into other things to do. And a lot of the opportunities that I've done over the last few years have come to me too. It's worked out. So being the executive director of Night to Remember and starting a ministry for a Heartland church here in Sun Prairie, all of that has come to be since I started back working again. Yeah,
and everything. I've been involved in Night to Remember and I'm at Heartland as well. So been very much a part of seeing what you have accomplished there. And, the one thing that always impressed me about you was you had this passion and desire to do these things, but you were very intentional and strategic, and they were always done very, very well and were very thought out, which made it much easier to get behind.
Yeah, thank you.
And the space that you created at Heartland, this is kind of like, I want to go hang out in there. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed today. I think I need to go into the sensory room.
Yes.
So you've accomplished a lot in your life, but there had to be these times where this is hard. There's so much that comes when you're dealing with special needs. So I just want to get real for a little bit and share What emotional processes did you go through, with your daughter? Knowing, because parents always know, right? There's something not right. Yeah. And then knowing prenatally, about Augie. So share with us those emotional roller coasters that had to happen.
Yes. So with my daughter, it's been hard. I think I had this vision of what it was going to be like to have a little girl and to raise a girl into a young woman, and it just hasn't been exactly what I thought it was going to be. And so early on, I think there were just things that I had to let go and work through and emotionally that it wasn't what I expected. It was a lot harder than I expected. We've had a lot of behavioral challenges with Maddie through the years, and just in the interactions that I had with her, I imagined, I don't know why this bedroom scene has always been something that I would go in and I would wake her up in the morning and, rub her back and just whisper good morning to her, and she'd wake up and be like, "Hi, Mom," and we'd do her hair. I just had this morning scene in my head before I ever had kids, and that is not how it has ever been with Maddie. You go in and you try to touch her when she's still sleeping, and that dysregulates her, and she wakes up angry. She needs her space in the morning. She doesn't want to interact. She's not a lovey-dovey kid. She's not going to come and give me a hug and say, "Hi, Mom." That's not her. And so I think there was a time where I grieved for what I thought motherhood was going to look like for raising a little girl. To get to where I am now, where I, fully accept and appreciate our relationship and who Maddie is and the great things about our mother-daughter relationship, even though it looks very different than what I had expected and at one point in my life wanted.
I thank you for sharing that, because it's really, in working with parents and also being involved with families, there's a bit of shame in that I shouldn't feel bad, but you do. And I love that you shared that part about I had to grieve it and let it go, because if you don't get to where you are now. So, I appreciate you sharing that part of the story.
Well, thanks. Yes, it's definitely something I've had to learn too, and have had a lot of great mentors and coaches in my life to help me get through things, and therapists as well, to speak into how we get through things that are not what we expect. So it's definitely not. It wasn't my first instinct, but it is something that I recognize that I had to do. And
is this the type of help that parents can also seek out through the network?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. We don't provide therapy or medical advice or whatnot, but we connect parents with other parents who have likely been through something similar and can share their experience or share their own resources. We're a network of 20,000 parents, so you're going to find somebody who's been through what you've been through.
Through COVID, we realized community is so important. Yes, so
absolutely.
Important. So then share with us Augie.
Yes, with Augie. So to go real deep, before I was pregnant with Augie, I had lost a baby about 2 months before I got pregnant with him. So very, very close to when I was pregnant again. And it was a second trimester loss. It was devastating, to say the least. And I was still grieving that loss when I got pregnant with Augie. And so there was fear at the start of that pregnancy. Absolutely. Because I thought that the same thing was going to happen, and this was before I ever knew that he potentially had Down syndrome. And then we did early screening because we had just lost a baby.
And I need to keep Kleenex on the set, because, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Okay, yes.
Yes, I'm going to try not to get too emotional. There was a time where I was very emotional about this, but my life has worked out how it's supposed to, and so I can talk about it without getting too emotional now. But at the time, I just went in, I was so fearful. And then I received a diagnosis of Down syndrome. And I remember that the genetics counselor was saying all of these things that I'm sure she needed to say, but I zeroed in on the potential risk of loss. Because when you're carrying a child that has Down syndrome, your chance of loss is quite high compared to pregnancy of a typical developing child. I was told 50% chance of loss, and that could continue throughout the pregnancy. And then every time I was at the doctor's office to get an ultrasound, which was quite often, there would be something new that they would tell me that would scare me. There's a hole in his heart. His liver is enlarged. He has cystic hygromas, which are fluid-filled sacs that were on his neck. We think maybe he has fetal leukemia. There were so many things that were shared that just filled me with fear and stressed me out to no end.
Absolutely.
And so we made it through the pregnancy. He survived and was still, after he was born, the doctors continued to tell us potentially all of the things that were wrong with my son medically. And that's a lot for a parent to hear and to take on. The fear of the unknown, because now not only is it all of the medical things, but I have a child with Down syndrome. What does that mean? What is that going to look like? What is life going to look like? I had accepted his diagnosis very early on in the pregnancy wholeheartedly. Before I move on from that, I think the reason I was able to, I didn't have to grieve much for that diagnosis. I was able to work through that much quicker because I had just lost a baby. And as long as my child had a heartbeat that continued to beat, we were going to be okay. So I was able to move through the grieving process pretty quickly with him, but there was still so many unknowns and so much fear that I think came a lot from the medical community because I think when you have a child that has a disability, doctors tend to share like the list of everything that potentially could go wrong with that child's life in its entirety. And it is so much for a parent to hear. Whereas with a typical child, there's also a huge list of things that could happen.
But you don't
talk about that. And so I'm not quite sure why that tends to be the case with a child with Down syndrome, at least with my experience. But that was my experience, and it was very overwhelming to start. So that was difficult. That was the emotional. That's when I needed to seek a therapist for anxiety and to help with my fears and to work through all of the feelings that I was feeling in those early, the pregnancy and in the early months of his life. And at 3.5 months old is when he had his open heart surgery. And when I tell you that was life changing for him, it saved his life. He went from just surviving to thriving, and he has never stopped since then. It was that significant for him.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know it's not easy, and I appreciate it. What I like is you have opened the door for a lot of parents to be okay with those feelings and struggles, and that it's also okay to get help and support.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely.
You know, it's a lot. And I think sometimes, there's been so much great advocacy for special needs, and our schools are doing so much better, our communities are doing so much better, and there's all this support that I wonder if sometimes parents kind of step down those feelings. It's like, well, I should be grateful because I have all this support, but yet I'm still grieving what could have been. And thank you so much for sharing that. It is okay, and it is a normal part of the process.
Absolutely it is.
So in that, I think sometimes you can go one or two ways, right? You can just let it kill you and take you down, or you can find these great ways and these outlets to help other people, to help advocate, to get involved. And that's what you chose to do.
Yes.
So you were involved in, or still involved in, A Night to Remember,
Yes.
which is one of my favorite events to be involved in. And I have to share, this past year, I did the welcome,
Yes.
and
Yep.
going, you kind of like check everybody in, and you have this rush in the beginning, and they're all excited, and they're getting their stuff, and you're like, this is so fun, and then it's like over.
Yes.
And you hear like all this fun happening down there, and I'm going, I should have signed up for like to do something else, because I'm like, wah, wah.
Well,
It's like,
you can definitely walk over there.
yeah, I know, it's fun. But we were all sitting there like, whoa, 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 and then all of a
Yes.
sudden it's just like done. Our
Yes.
job is, and we're like,
Well, that's because
Well,
we try to get people moved through so
I
they can walk the red carpet and get
and
into
do
the
all
dance.
that. So yeah, I got to sign up for some more, parts, because
Well,
it was
please
just
do.
so it was really funny, just like that hubbub, and then all of a
Yes.
sudden it was just this echo of all this fun happening down there. But share with us A Night to Remember, a little bit how it got started, what the purpose is. I knew it grew very, very quickly.
Yes.
I came when I was going to Heartland. I think it was the year they had the last one at Heartland.
Okay.
And then it moved.
Before we had to move because we got so big.
Yes. So
Yes.
share with us the growth, and first how it started, and then
Right.
the growth of it.
So just for anybody who doesn't know, it is a prom-like experience that we host every year for individuals with disabilities in our community. It started by my friend and Ashley McNary. It was her idea to do this big prom-like experience, I like to say, because it's not really a prom. It's like prom times 1,000.
Yes.
We do more than I think what a high schooler would expect for prom if they were going. We do tuxedos and dresses for our guests ahead of time. At the event, we do hair and makeup and shoe shining, and we provide jewelry. Everything is free of charge, and they keep the jewelry, they keep the dresses. They don't get to keep the tuxedo. That's a rental. But everything is free. So they get to wear a tuxedo if they want and, feel handsome and spiffy for that night. We do limo rides around the Capitol. We don't walk the red carpet. Our guests walk the red carpet, and we line the red carpet with what we call our paparazzi. And the paparazzi is cheering, and they know that guest by name because we announce it. And so they can cheer for Augie, they can cheer for Jacob, and all of our other friends that are walking the red carpet. And then the dance is happening at the same time. So it's just a really fun, energetic evening of dancing and activity, and so much fun and so much celebration for individuals with disabilities in our community. We also do a respite area for our parents that happens simultaneously. So that's the laid back and calm space with piano music and massage and food. And we just really try to give parents a break for a couple hours while their children are taken care of and partying. And it's open to all ages and just individuals with disabilities in our community.
It was awesome. And during, COVID, there was a big shift.
Yes.
But you guys did an amazing job. So I was part of, doing
you.
during COVID. So just share that shift that you had to make.
So we did Day to Remember for 2 years. And so we took the party to our guests. And so we created party teams, teams of 5 to 10, I think was the second year. And those teams would show up in a driveway or in an apartment complex, and we'd bring music and a red carpet and a party box and a T-shirt, and we'd turn the music on. And we wouldn't be able to stay for 2 hours, but for 15 to 20 minutes, that party crew would just celebrate that guest and make sure that guests knew how loved and celebrated they were. And so it was super fun to do it in a different way, and everybody had masks on, and we did social distancing, we were outside, we did all of the things to keep our guests safe, but we did it in a fun way to carry on Night to Remember. And we're still coming back from COVID, I'd say. Last year was a slightly different event. We weren't able to do all of the things that we had done in the past. And this year we're still planning out our scope, so I'm not quite sure all what we'll offer, but I know it's going to be epic like usual, and I know our guests are going to have a really great time.
Yeah, it's and for those who volunteer, I mean, I just cannot explain the high that you are on that lasts for several days after.
Yeah.
But to be
I agree.
able to make these kids feel so special and so important. And, the funny things you do that, a couple of them will go down the red carpet and then they'll run back around and they'll go down the red carpet again. And, there is something too when you just see them dressed up and feeling beautiful, that, they're human.
Yes.
And we all like that. And just to see them light up and feel so good about themselves
absolutely.
is just an amazing experience.
Absolutely.
So share with us too a little bit more. I want to do just a little bit more of a deep dive into and I want to say it correctly, the Down Syndrome Diagnosis Network.
Yes.
When families are on that site, what resources will they find?
Yes, so our main way that we connect parents is through our online support groups. It all happens through Facebook. And so every 6 months we create a new group for parents that just had a child with Down syndrome. So we just created a group for January through June of 2023. Any parent that has, or any mom who has a child between January and June of this year will be placed into that group with other moms that have just had a baby with Down syndrome. That group will exist forever. So they will be connected to parents that are going through the same stages at the same time as them across the United States. My birth group has 250 moms. All of our kids are going to turn 7 or are starting to turn 7 because we were January through June of 2016. And that's the bread and butter of what we do, is we connect parents that have kids the same age and they can experience life together virtually for the most part because we're all spread out. But you don't always find locally, while there's great support here locally and in many communities for Down syndrome, you're not always going to find the numbers of parents that have kids the same age, that have gone through something that you're going through at the same time or recently have gone through it. So we provide a new layer of support compared to what a parent could find here locally. We also have topical subgroups, so heart groups, vision groups, hearing loss, intestinal issues. Those parents can be connected into a group where it's all about babies that have heart defects or children that have heart defects, and can ask questions, get connected, find resources in that way. We have affinity groups, so we have our dad's group, we have a Black families group, we have an LGBTQIA group. So parents can find families that look like theirs and maybe are experiencing things like theirs through those affinity groups. We also have a good list of parent resources on our site, and we also connect parents to local organizations if they're not already connected. If they found us before they found their local organization, we're able to do that. And then annually we host an in-person retreat. So our moms are going to San Antonio this year, and our dads are going to St. Louis.
Wow.
And so it's a weekend to connect and recharge. It's a retreat. It's not a conference. It's truly about kicking back and relaxing and spending time with moms who get it or dads who get it. No kids. Usually no spouses. I for sure leave everybody home because it's my time to connect with my friends and to recharge and get rejuvenated. And
because you are taking in so much information.
Yes.
You just need to be able to unplug.
Yeah.
The time went by so quick. I appreciate you so much. Go ahead and share with us the website for Night to Remember.
So Night to Remember is ntrheartland.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for tuning into the Parenting Game.
We're all familiar with the 3 whats: what it is, what it can do for me, and what does it cost. Tyler Rickenaugh, Country Financial, can help you find the answers with insurance coverage to help protect what's most important to you, all at a price you can afford. So while you're juggling work and kids while trying to keep an eye on your financial future, Tyler Rickenaw, Country Financial, will make sure they are the first ones there when you need them most.
The kids are back to school, and your schedule is busier than ever. From daycare pickup, doctor's appointments, sports, and college tuition, a parent's signature is a powerful thing. Have you ever stopped to think, what would happen if you weren't able to provide one? With thoughtful estate planning, you can make sure that your child's health and education needs are met in the event of your absence due to a temporary incapacity or even death. The estate planning team at Hurley Burish is here to help.
Thank you for watching The Parenting Game. All episodes of The Parenting Game are available on demand at sunprairiemediacenter.com.